28th of September. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Time to update Chrome again. Google has released a patch for an actively exploited zero-day vulnerability. It's being tracked as CVE 2023-5217, high severity vulnerability, and it is a heap-based buffer overflow in VP8 compression, which is part of libvpx, and just in case you didn't know, that appears to be a video codec library from Google. The vulnerability allows for buffer overflows. Buffer overflows in this case can either crash programs or it can even potentially execute arbitrary code. Recommendation is to upgrade. The latest version, if you want to check, is 117.0.5938.132 for Windows, macOS, and Linux. Also, if you are using Chromium-based browsers such as Microsoft Edge, Brave, Opera, Vivaldi, and so on and so forth, recommend you check for fixes, updates for them as well. So, a Chinese APT, which goes by many names, Circuit Panda, Radio Panda, various other names, but in this particular article they're referring to it as BlackTech, has been stealthily replacing Cisco firmware with their own backdoored versions, aiming to gain a foothold into organizations. And they do this via targeting the smaller international subsidiaries of global organizations with an intention of hopping to the headquarters of affected organizations. This technique has been spotted in government, industrial, technology, media, electronics, telecommunications, and also entities that support the militaries of the US and Japan, according to a cyber advisory from the NSA, FBI, and the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. Japanese National Police and cybersecurity authorities have also confirmed this. Okay, it's unclear which specific CVEs are being exploited in order to do this, but the basic methodology is once access has been gained, downgrade the firmware on the routers, and then patch in memory with malicious compromised version. So they are able to do this without necessarily having to reboot the routers, which does make this somewhat harder to spot. I think it's fair to say that most organizations are not don't have visibility of the firmware versions that are in use or any alerting when those change for most of their network kit. It's actually not impossible to do. And again, it is something that is potentially worth getting into your SIEM. More genuinely useful than a lot of the other data that people tend to take from networks. Would recommend that you do that. Would also recommend that you keep on top of vulnerabilities in any of the particular versions of whatever it is that you're running. This this method of compromise is not unique to SyscoKit. There are indications that any of the major network providers can be targeted in a similar way. It's a little bit unclear as to what is actively being exploited, but this does give the attacker a relatively difficult to detect foothold into organizations. Why are they trying to do this? Well, I think a lot of it is down to just being able to have that access in case they need it. There will be some information gathering from this, so it's just the usual sort of stuff, but quite likely in the same way that some other adversarial groups simply like to have access and a presence within organizations. This will be very similar. So the eavesdropping on stuff, they can from this run netcat shells, SSH, RDP, various things, and it then, as you say, gives a foothold to the inside of otherwise protected environments. What can you do about it? Well, keep on top of vulnerabilities. Make sure you've got good access control to any of your network devices. Best not to rely on local usernames and passwords, certainly for internet facing network devices. Previously used to use AAA authentication quite extensively. Do try to find ways of building MFA into the authentication, so on and so forth. But to some extent, you are in the hands of the manufacturers, given the way that firmware updates are managed. It is difficult to eliminate this as a potential vulnerability. So one to keep an eye on. British charities have had some personal data stolen. So if you are a supporter of Shelter, RSPCA, Dogs Trust, Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, or the Friends of the Earth, be warned that a third-party supplier run by Kokoro has been breached. The Kokoro run things like they run services in the background. Kokoro deal with things like surveys of supporters and that sort of stuff. So Kokoro has been holding donators' surnames, home addresses, email addresses, information about previous donations, that sort of stuff. Some of the charities have been reaching out and notifying supporters that this data has been breached. Mitigation, I suppose, to some of this is that financial information, as in information of your banking details and passwords, do not appear to have been swept up in this. However, would say that the information that has been leaked does give other attackers the ability to formulate more convincing phishing emails. So if there is the potential that either Shelter, RSPCA, Dogs Trust, Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, or the Friends of the Earth might have your email address for whatever reason, previous supporter, your previous donator, those sorts of things. Just be aware over the foreseeable. If you're getting unsolicited requests for money from these charities, for example, treat with a little bit of suspicion. At least check out that if you are going to donate or whatever it may be, that the email that you're using to link to the payment sites is actually going to where you expect it to be going to. Equally, though, I would say it would be a very sad day if this sort of thing dented people's confidence in the charity sector and cut back, resulting in any cutbacks in donations or support, because all these charities are doing an absolutely superb job, in my personal opinion. And I think we need to help educate people on how to make sure that they are interacting with the real charity rather than with something spoofing it, rather than let people just shrug their shoulders and walk away, which would, I think, in all these cases, would be a very bad thing. And then finally, from me today, interesting article I came across on HelpNet Security around preparing for mandated certificate automation. Now, I've got to say, I wasn't aware of this, but according to the article, there could be significant changes with the public key infrastructure marketplace. The most pressing matter being Google's move to reduce the lifespan of SSL TLS certificates. The solution to meet this call by Google and other browsers is to automate certificate management. It appears that at some point in the not too distant future, Google will be reducing the maximum certificate age to 90 days. As in, I think what they're saying is that the browser won't trust certificates that are more than 90 days old, which, again, I'm assuming means it doesn't matter what the certificate expiry date is. They're looking at the certificate creation date, adding 90 days, and then not trusting it after that. I wasn't aware that this was even being discussed. I can't say it's necessarily a bad thing. I do think it is going to be challenging. We in that security company use PKI reasonably extensively, and it can, certificate management, I think, was one of the weaker areas of PKI just generally, and it can be challenging to update certificates. And if this is then going to be expected on a wide scale on what I'm presuming will be internet-facing services, if Google browsers are where the drive is coming from, I think it may be quite hard to do that. So I would say have a read of this article and do some research. I'm certainly going to have a little bit of a dig around what actually is being proposed here. Because maybe I'm just not close enough to it. Maybe everybody else has spotted this one already, and I'm late to the party. Well, that wouldn't necessarily be a surprise to me. I've been late to many parties on many occasions in my time, but I just don't recall seeing an awful lot about this. So I suggest read the article if you think you might be affected by this. Then do some digging, because changing PKI certificates, TLS certificates every 90 days could be quite challenging if you only use manual methods of managing certificates, which I suspect is the case for a lot of smaller organizations. If you are not in a position to implement automation in this space quickly, your devices live behind properly tied down firewalls, blah blah blah. There are things like slightly concerning things that, for example, in the default way of certificates from Let's Encrypt, for example, they want HTTP port 80 to be accessible on the device that you're trying to create the certificate on from their infrastructure. So, inbound port 80. Well, this sort of stuff you generally don't have open these days. So it's a little worrisome if you are looking just to move to a straightforward automation of existing certificates. Anyway, look, it's an area I'm not completely up to speed with. We'll do some more digging, have a read, have a think. If it might affect you, it is a good time to start preparing what you're going to do about it. So that is all from me for this morning. I hope you have a great Thursday, and I will speak to you all again